No, used to go to each other's house, and if when they were Eid, we used to wait for Eid because they used to bring the meat and we couldn't afford the meat.
In school, I remember learning about India and learning about Gandhi, but it seems to be that it got to 1946 and Gandhi's heralded as a great fighter for Indian independence, but then it seems that we don't want to talk about partition.
You know, they all, you could go to any house and have something to eat. You know, they were living like ordinary people, village. They were no different at all.
And looking at the newspaper headlines, at the papers at the time, with freedom and celebration and joy, it's just masking over a whole load of really horrific events and what actually happened to people.
We couldn't understand when first year he went to school that there's a water tap says Muslim, water tap Hindu, and as a child you say, oh, why, and then your parents telling you that our religion is better, we don't want your parents saying your religion is better, and when you look, nobody born with a religion.
But the promise of somewhere, bodies dropped to the floor like beads of sweat, their humanity soaking into the parched ground, their rotting bones becoming arrows to a new land. If my skin could speak, it would be screaming. If my lungs had hands, they would be ringing.
I think this event is commemorating end of British Empire in India.
What do you miss most about your homeland?
I think the concept of homeland is what do you call a colonial concept. Yeah, homeland. Yeah. What do you mean by homeland? Everyone comes from somewhere.
Well, I define it as British Asian, so that's how I feel comfortable describing myself. I definitely feel that I'm part of this country, but there is that side of me that comes from South Asia that I need to acknowledge.
I'm not sure whether it should be a celebration, because although I don't know a huge amount about it, it doesn't feel like we should be celebrating drawing a line across two countries. So for me it's important that we're remembering it, and it's a commemoration of 70 years.
For me, I think the partition itself is a really important story to be told, and I think it can get overshadowed in people talking about all the celebrations.
Independence Day has also brought in a lot of misery. So celebrating something that actually had a massive impact and continues to have a massive impact on people here and back home, I don't want to celebrate that.
I feel quite ashamed to be British, and that we drew lines across countries and made people move to different places and then punished them if they weren't moving. So although I don't know about it, I know enough to know that we imposed a line on people which caused them to be refugees and caused a lot of bloodshed and a lot of fighting.
So we have to be very careful when we talk about celebration. What are we going to celebrate? Are we going to celebrate with this sort of, we still treat it like inferiority and we're still treated like second-class citizens? I don't think we should.
I think it should be commemorated because as well there was a lot of death and a lot of sadness, lots of people lost their close ones and loved ones, so we should all also remember about them and how they would feel back then as well.
But I do want to celebrate that the freedom of individuals, the freedom of nations and the freedom of people, that should be celebrated. But one could argue that we are still paying the price of independence, the way it was done, the way it was carved up, and the sort of anger and the disappointment of the two great nations now.
I really enjoyed it because it shows all our cultures and everything. It shows how similar we are. It's like there's not much difference between Pakistan and India. I think that the culture should be celebrated because of how similar they are, and there are also like minor differences that should also be shown.
So celebration is a word that we need to sort of take it seriously and coin it in a way that we understand it as British Asians and black people in a sense on it.
I mean, I think there's a bit of both going on, which is what people like. For me, I think the partition itself is a really important story to be told, and I think it can get overshadowed in people talking about all the celebrations.
Today has been a really positive event, and it showed that history should be told to everyone, not just from a British Empire perspective. Some of the interviewers have pointed out that the history of partition wasn't told at school, or they didn't have any knowledge about it. So through this event, and since it's the 70th anniversary of partition, people got to know more about partition, as well as the whole idea of how two different cultures were born, Pakistan and India, both living in Britain, and how they represent themselves in Britain, their cultural identity. The oral history account gives an idea of what people went through. It gets the message across of the lives they lived back home and the memories they brought with them with the British Empire.
Muslim of the village cried, because we have to leave, and they were saying, you shouldn't go, and they help us to get out of the trouble as well.
My dad said, obviously his best friend was, a Hindu, and he was like a brother to him. But he said when this happened, he didn't want to know. Those people who couldn't kill fly, whole their life, they were so gentle, so nice, but on the name of religion, they were willing to kill people.